Okay, guys, I want to apologize. I'm finding it rather challenging to find a quiet place in my home and even outside to record these videos. I keep getting interrupted. So I'm really, really sorry if they're choppy and I seem distracted. There's people doing all kinds of crazy things every place I go. But I hope you can see the pictures pretty well and just get to listen. The story we're reading from today is called Let's Go. And what I love about this story is it ties so many things back to some of the stories we've already read. And I want to see if you can kind of make some of those connections. They're pretty obvious, but I'll help point some of them out. And it's just amazing to me to think about when we started our journey reading these stories, all of the connections that it's making to Jesus. And the plan that God had all along from the beginning of the world to bring Jesus and to rescue us using his son. So this is a super great story. After Jesus was baptized, he went straight out into the desert. Now that might seem like an odd place to go because, as you know, deserts are very hot and there isn't any food or water or places to stay. But Jesus needed to get away by himself and be somewhere quiet and lonely. He needed to be with his heavenly Father to get ready for his new life. In the desert, Jesus thought about the secret rescue plan he had made with God. Before the foundation of the world, they both knew what would have to happen. To rescue God's children, Jesus would have to die. There was no other way. It was the reason he had come. Now that old enemy, the one who had spoken through the snake to Adam and Eve back in the garden, remember him? He didn't want Jesus to rescue God's people, so he lied to Jesus. "Are you really God's own son?" he whispered. "Poor you. God must not love you. You don't need to die. Do it my way." And "No," Jesus said to the liar, "I will do what God says." And that was something, do you remember the snake back in the garden? He lied to Adam and Eve. And he tempted them and he said, God must not really love you. If he doesn't want you to be like him and he's not going to let you eat that fruit and be super smart and powerful, then he doesn't really love you. And the difference is they believed Satan's lie. But Jesus, God's son, said, "No way. I'm not going to hear that. I'm doing what God says." Jesus wasn't like Adam. Jesus was a new kind of man. He would not believe the terrible lie the enemy spoke. Jesus knew God loved him and he would trust God no matter what. It was just as God had promised to Adam and Eve all those years before. Jesus had come to do battle against the snake's work. He would get rid of the sin and the darkness and the tears, and he would suffer, but he would win. Jesus left the desert and set about the great rescue. He was going to get God's people back. But first he needed to find some helpers and friends. He had a lot to do. He would need some people to help him. Who would make good helpers, do you think? Clever, rich, strong, important people? Some people might think so, but I'm sure by now you don't need me to tell you they'd be wrong. Remember King David? He had 7 brothers, and Samuel went through all of them, and they were tough, and they were strong, and they were handsome, and they were mighty, and God kept saying, not him, not him, not him. It was the little guy, the unsuspecting one that he chose. Because the people God uses don't have to know a lot of things or have a lot of things. They just need to need him a lot. One day, Jesus was walking by the Sea of Galilee when he saw some brothers and friends mending their nets. They were poor fishermen. Jesus called out to them, "Let's go." Peter, Andrew, James, and John looked up at this man on the shore, and they couldn't explain it. Their boats needed to be put away. Their nets needed mending. Fish were still wriggling on the shore. But something about this stranger made them just drop their nets and their fish, leave their boats and everything, and follow him right there. This God-man was like no one they had ever met. When they looked at Jesus, their hearts filled up with wonderful, forever sort of happiness, and inside it was as if they were running free in an open field. Jesus asked 12 men to be his helpers: Peter, Andrew, James, John, Matthew, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, another James, Simon, Thaddeus, and Judas. Meeting Jesus would change all of them forever.